Hello and welcome to the Carline Conversation Podcast. My name is Jason. My guest today is my good friend, Matt Wallin. Matt is the Director of Promotions at House to House, Heart to Heart, which is an organization dedicated to spreading the gospel through print and digital media. He's also the Outreach Minister for the Calhoun Church of Christ in Calhoun, Georgia. He and his wife, Ashlei, have 3 wonderful daughters. Now, there are 2 things you need to know about Matt. He loves his family, and he loves telling people the good news about Jesus. In this conversation, we combine those. Matt shares with us some simple yet powerful ways that we can share the gospel and include our kids in that experience. He shares with us some of the family traditions that he and Ashlei have implemented in their family to help their daughters identify opportunities for them to also share the gospel. He talks about being intentional in our own lives as adults. And so not only do our kids hear instruction about sharing the gospel, but they also get to experience that in real time. Matt is a huge encouragement to me and always has been, and I think that this conversation will encourage you as well. As always, I want to thank you for stopping by the Carline Conversation. I hope this is helpful. Matt, thanks so much for joining me today, man. I'm excited to have you on the podcast.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. I'm more excited than you are.
Oh, yeah, probably. Anyway.
That's fair.
And I'm excited in particular for this topic when it comes to evangelism and sharing your faith and creating just a lifestyle of evangelism. A few people come to mind more quickly than you. You work for a company called House to House, Heart to Heart, organization that tries to spread the gospel through printed materials and other means. Could you give folks that aren't familiar with House to House a little bit of background on what you do and what the organization does?
Yeah, absolutely. So I found out recently that 53% of people that eventually come to Christ, a part of that is that they read gospel literature that has been printed and handed out. And so to kind of capitalize on that, several years ago, one of my coworkers just took their bulletin and started mailing it to the community. And then instead of talking about like the potluck that was about to happen or something, they would do things that were more basic and trying to draw people in and start conversations and do some teaching. And so it grew from one congregation to now we've worked with about 4,500 congregations, and we work with churches of Christ all over the world. We've worked in about 136 countries. I just got a message from Finland that their copies just arrived, so that's a new country for us. Got pictures today from a church in Madagascar that's handing out some tracts and stuff. So really mainly churches in the U.S. because we customize it on the front and back and mail it into the community for the local Church of Christ. But we also send materials in bulk to congregations all over the world. And in the past few years, especially, we've really expanded. We have a school of evangelism that will travel around and help train congregations to be evangelistic and talk about some of the things that we're going to talk about today, and produce Bible correspondence courses and Bible studies, personal Bible studies with your friends. So trying to educate and just get people excited about sharing the gospel and then giving them some tools that will help them do that.
That's awesome. Not just inspiring them, but also trying to equip them with some tools there, like you said. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So as long as we've known each other, I feel like you're the closest thing that I know to a real life Ferris Bueller. Just always
I look like him too, I've heard.
What?
I kind of look like him too, I've heard.
Well, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't see it, but I hear it.
You bring the leopard vest with the white t-shirt, then yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can see the resemblance. But you've always been a person that engages people. In fact, one of our first trips together was a concert. I think it was maybe to see the Beastie Boys over in Atlanta, and we didn't really know each other that well. But your personality, you engage people easily, and it seemed to be a very comfortable thing. Is that something that's always been a part of your personality, easy to talk to folks, or is that something that you've also had to work on in some ways?
That's a good question. No, it's really grown, and so I think sometimes when somebody says they're introverted, that can be true. You don't have to change who you are, and who you are. In some ways, maybe you can't change parts of it, but I think you can if you set a goal. You can change certain things about yourself, and you can just become more comfortable with things. So instead of a label maybe deciding everything about us, maybe that just informs us of the areas that we need to grow. And so it is for me. I remember a time when my parents saw me in a social setting. We were driving back actually from my first visit to Faulkner, and they thought I was asleep. And they talked about how, like, man, when he's with people he knows, he's just so outgoing, but when he's around strangers, he's not. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's a fair critique. I was very nervous and out of my element. But I remember once I was in high school, I started going to Oak Hill, and then I started visiting Faulkner and getting to know people. Oh, it really changed my life. Now I feel like literally I can walk in anywhere and make friends with people. But it's been a real progress. It's taken some work. I remember, this is kind of embarrassing, but one time I first started going to Oak Hill. So I was driving my grandmother there so I could be at a bigger congregation. And I was just so overwhelmed, felt like I was killing a social situation. I just went to the bathroom, just went into the bathroom just to be like, "Whew, this is going poorly." So didn't even have to go, just went in there to escape for a second, you know? So I don't feel like I do that anymore. But yeah, I've grown in those things and tried to work on my personality, work on how I relate to people. And it becomes easier and you actually get to the point where you enjoy it. At least that has been that way for me.
Yeah, I found that different experiences definitely build confidence the more you have them there. You mentioned there and your grandmother. Who are some of the other influences that you would say have had an impact on you building that confidence, but specifically in the area of encouraging you to share your faith, but also maybe giving you some skills and some direction on how to share your faith in different situations?
Yeah, so my dad was a first generation Christian. And so a lot of strengths from that, a lot of skills, but also some weaknesses. I think he just did the best he could. So I never grew up at a congregation or in our home seeing people do personal Bible studies. And so there were some conversions, but it was like, oh, this guy just walked in off the street and we didn't kick him out. Or it's a child of someone who's grown up here, but just true conversions, I didn't see them. So, like anything else, whatever you grow up with is normal. And so that was just normal to me. But honestly, I remember as a middle school student reading Acts 2 and realizing, oh man, there are parts of this that we're not doing. So I think that was more helpful to me than anything else I've ever done is realizing that if we're going to be the true church of the Bible, we have to do all the things that they did. And just starting to look around and ask questions like, well, they were together all the time. We're not together that much. When they were together, they mainly did spiritual things and everybody did some teaching. And so realizing, okay, it's not normal in my home or normal in my congregation, but it is normal according to God. And so I'm going to have to do that. And so really just trying to apply Acts 2. I became very social because of that. I think in part, I've been very willing to give my car or let people stay with me or give money over the years because of that. Some of these other things, like knowing how to teach and what to teach, have come more recently. But I think that was as big a thing as any is just reading the Bible, and crazy as it sounds, is just doing it. And that conviction that I had has helped change me. And then even working here at House to House, you're constantly talking with some of the best people in the world about the best subject, evangelism and the Lord. And that rubs off on you. And if you're going to tell people to be evangelistic, you need to be evangelistic. So my coworkers, people like you at good congregations that I talk to, and then just this responsibility now that I have to grow in this way is important. I remember David Shannon did a gospel meeting at Jacksonville probably 15 years ago. And I started listening to him. I started listening to speakers at PTP, Polishing the Pulpit, speak on evangelism. And then I started to tell, okay, this guy isn't just speaking on an assigned topic. He is speaking from his heart and his life and his experience. And so now, though that guy had not walked into my life in my local congregation or in my home, I'm starting to pick out guys who are preaching this and they're practicing what they preach. So getting to know some of those guys, going to visit them, calling them, texting with them, and asking them for advice. I mean, I've visited Kensington Woods in Hattiesburg and Long Island Church of Christ in New York and Mount Juliet where David is, and spent time with Rob Whitaker or Colt Mahana. These are some of the people, especially over the past few years, that I've gotten to know. And so like one thing I say sometimes is if you want to be broke, hang out with broke people. If you want to be rich, you got to know some rich people. And so it is with soul winners as well. If you want to be one, you've got to know some. And so getting to know guys who, though they weren't local to me, talking to them has really changed my life.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to throw out. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman. Maybe that applies as well. No, I love that. You just hang out with the people that do the things well that you want to do well, and then learn from them. Hear how they engage people. I've growing up, I had a youth minister who engaged people everywhere. We would go to Walmart to get supplies, and he would talk to somebody about the gospel. We go to Cracker Barrel, and he talked to the waitress. You know, we never left. I guess I learned to see every encounter as an opportunity. I think that's important as well, like you're saying there. I think a lot of parents, a lot of times, get a little bit hesitant. Maybe they don't feel like they have enough confidence in their own or know how to teach the things that they know very well. And so, because they're not naturally drawn to doing that, then they kind of rely on maybe Bible classes or other people to be that main influence on their kids. What do you think are some of the greatest hindrances that you've seen or heard, either in your life or in the life of other parents, when it comes to specifically teaching or modeling evangelism for our children?
Yeah, I mean, What is the greatest challenge or hindrance to parents teaching their kids about bees and making their own honey? What is the biggest challenge or hindrance to parents teaching their kids how to rebuild an engine? Well, they don't know how, and
Yeah.
they've never seen it done. And so it's the same thing with evangelism is a lot of times we've just never seen it done and we have no idea where to start. So I think most of us are 2 generations away from having family members who are comfortable studying with people at their kitchen table. And so now not only have we not done it, we actually haven't even seen it done. And maybe even our parents never even saw it done. And so the biggest entrance is, well, I mean, I don't know how to rebuild an engine. Right. But you could if you put your mind to it. And I know you might have a big learning curve, but why can some kid who grew up with a mechanic as a father just do everything? Well, it was normal. He saw it done. They were, I mean, did you do this with your dad? You're holding the flashlight under the hood and you're never holding it in the right spot and you always get distracted. But that's how they learned how to do those things, by watching. And so we haven't seen that. And so now here we are raising our own kids. And how can we teach them to do something we don't know how to do? So what you have to do throughout this is you have to figure it out. And for the purposes of our discussion today, you have to include your kids in it as you're figuring it out.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the stuff that I dreaded as a kid, like helping my dad build a tree house, turned out to be some of the best life experience and actual knowledge that I didn't know at the time. It was inconvenient because I just wanted to play, but really it hands-on learning. And there's a quote from Scrubs that I remember from several episodes years ago, was learn by doing. And there is an element of that to this: learn by being around people that are doing it, and then try it. You'll never learn if you don't ever try it. Kind of like swimming, you can even practice and talk technique outside the pool all you want, but until you get in the water and put it into practice, you'll never really know what it feels like or what it is to actually do it. So that's great advice there. What are some challenges that you think families face when it comes to actually living out that Great Commission, beyond just like going to Bible class, and when they're coming and going, when they're at the ballpark, when they're on field trips with their class, or in different environments like that? What are some things that you think build up a kid's faith and their confidence in sharing their faith? And what are some of the challenges that families face in not taking advantage of opportunities? How can parents see opportunities a little clearer, and then how can they build up the confidence in their kids to take advantage of those opportunities?
Yeah. So one thing you mentioned about the youth ministers, is that who you were talking about, who just would talk about it everywhere. Um, you're probably not that far away if you're listening to this and you're not like that. You're probably not as far away from being like that as you think, because some parts of this require skill and experience and things, but the biggest thing is just a willingness to do it. And so I imagine if you would just say, okay, guess what? I want to be like that guy Jason was talking about. It will be awkward the first few times, but it won't take you long after that for it to become natural, right? Just like you see something about Alabama and everybody yells roll tide, or you buy a new car and now you see that everywhere. It doesn't take you long to just be looking for something and you see opportunity. And I don't think there's any shortcut to get from I'm terrible at this and terrified to I just do it regularly without a little bit of I'm just going to throw it out there and see what happens. And it doesn't take you many times. Like the gap between where you may be now and where you are, where the guy Jason was talking about is actually pretty small. It feels like a chasm. You have no idea how to get there, but actually it's just your effort. If you'll put forth a little bit of effort, you'll get better at it as you go. And specific challenges, and we'll talk more about how to overcome this one, but you just don't know how. Like we mentioned, I think that's the biggest thing. Because are we mainly talking to good people? Yeah. Moral people? Sure. People that love the Lord and love the people around them. I think we are. I think that's the only kind of person that would listen to this podcast. So it's not about love primarily. It's about don't know how. But as long as you can acknowledge, yep, that's it, and I'm going to work on it, I think you can overcome it. I also think, though, for some people, and we wouldn't admit it, and maybe we don't even see it fully, but we are pretty selfish in our life. Is it okay to have a hobby? Yeah, sure. Would it be okay for a family to work to have nice things? Of course. But the challenging thing is, what percentage of your time can you spend in a hobby or working more than you absolutely have to? And that's okay with God. What percentage of yourself can you pour into travel sports, working out, finances, and those are all okay things and even good godly things as far as taking care of your body and your finances. But how much can you pour into that and not pour into the Lord? And that's okay. And so I think our schedules is something that, if you look at it, oftentimes can reveal where you're at with God, because what is on there? If it's just sports, if it's just your hobbies, if there's nothing on there, then that's a problem. And so we'll talk about in a second maybe the other problem that could come from being too busy. But I think for most people, that's not the danger they run, is being too busy for the Lord. It's not being busy enough. And I really think see you next Sunday or see you on Wednesday is killing the church. Your calendar, and this is not just if you're on staff, because I'm not on staff at a local church, but our calendars need to be dripping with church work, the work of ministry. You know, which dream are you chasing, parent? The American dream or the Christian dream? And so I think that's a huge thing. The other thing I would say, kind of the opposite side of that problem for some of us, I think more of us are in danger of what we just talked about, not doing enough and being too selfish. But some people, I imagine you're like this, you actually run the risk of doing too much. And you could run the risk of doing it without your family. So that's a huge risk, I think, in doing this. Is it's easy to get pulled away from your family. But I think if you do the majority of this work without your family, you may lose them. And it's just not worth that. No matter how many Bible studies you can have or how big of a congregation you can grow, it's not worth it if you lose your family, because that's your primary ministry. And so I have to remind myself of that. I can do a certain number of things without my family, church-wise, but I need to try to figure out ways to include them as much as possible. And so be balanced and include your kids as much as possible. Be wise. Most of us don't need that part of the advice, but some of us do. So I don't know. Those are some of the biggest challenges I see. Or any others that you see?
I think those definitely the selfish part of it. I think the biggest place to begin is perspective. Like you say, we give our time and attention to all of these other things, whether it be recreational events, sports activities, extracurriculars, and we set our schedule based on those. And a lot of times we have those things throughout the week. We're tired, we're drained, and so then when something that is spiritual comes up, we think, well, we just need extra bedtime. We've already been up all this time all week for these other things, and I think that that communicates value. What has the greatest value in your family? What do you put the biggest emphasis on? What do you celebrate? What do you focus on? What creates your schedule? And it needs to be the things that have the greatest spiritual value. It's not always easy to see that sometimes in the moment, and so I think that's one of those things that, as a parent, talking to your spouse on a regular basis, and every season we calibrate our schedule. If there's an opportunity for a new extracurricular, whether it be we've got our boys play sports, our daughter does this new thing called Green Power, and a host of other, basically she's an achiever, so anything that's available to do, she wants to add to the calendar. And sometimes the answer is just simply no, because we already have these other things we've committed to that are spiritual. And so whether that be a church activity or a worship gathering, Bible study gathering, those kinds of things, those those are the concrete elements of our schedule. When we supplement it with these other things, I've started feeling more of a not just a desire, but a responsibility to coach my kids, because I get to set the culture of that team. I get to talk with those players and their families about spiritual things, and not just teach them how to swing a bat and hit a ball. And so when we do choose something that is not necessarily spiritual in nature, we're always spiritual in our nature. And
Yeah,
so
great point. Yeah.
to make that set the tone, to make that the culture of the environment and that sort of thing. So when you work for a church like I do as your occupation, then you can easily find yourself surrounded by Christians almost all the time.
Yeah.
And to create spaces in your day and in your schedule where you're around people that maybe don't know the gospel, and that you would be just as willing to go and find them as you are to have them come to the building and find you. So I think that's a big part of that, is just the perspective. Like you said, we use the phrase all the time, dribble with your head up. When you dribble with your head up, one, you know where the boundaries are, you know where the defense is, where the enemy is, but you also know where your help and your support is. So you dribble with your head down, you can just kind of get in your own rhythm sometimes, and you forget to look up and see the opportunities that are right there, both opportunities to share, but also opportunities to learn and for support as well. With that in mind, I got a quick question, because I know you guys have done a variety of ways of reaching people and studying with people. What are some of the techniques that you've used to engage in conversation? Do you have like a go-to if you're out of a restaurant? I know you guys have used your home to practice hospitality and to let the gospel be a part of that. Would you mind sharing a couple of those ideas and experiences that you've seen some spiritual fruit from?
Yeah, I was thinking while you were talking about the idea of mindset, and I think it's important to think of yourself as a minister or a missionary everywhere you go. You're on a mission trip right now in your life. And that's easier, I think, for someone who is in a secular job in certain ways, because a minister can just go hide behind a closed door with all the Christians. And honestly, who would call him out for that? Most of the time, not anybody. You could be a great minister and never be around the lost, which is a shame. So someone like you and I, who primarily work with Christians, we have to be intentional about it, right? But an advantage, that's an advantage. It's a great thing and a blessing. But an advantage, somebody who's a blue collar worker, or let's say, is you can treat it like your mission field and just know you're not just primarily going there to get a paycheck, though God expects you to do that, and that's a blessing, but you're also in a mission field. And so certain jobs, obviously, you have to handle certain things different ways. But I think just looking for that opportunity on the ball team, right, is what are your conversations like? So one thing that we do, and I've learned this from a coworker of mine, Rod, has been great for me. The Long Island church has been great, but just including God in everything that you do, right? So someone says, "How was your weekend?" What I did most of my life is I wasted that opportunity because they don't know it, but they've just invited me to have a spiritual conversation, because then I'm saying, "Oh man, Sunday was great. I'm teaching this Bible class on this, and here's something that I learned. My friend brought up this question in Bible class, or the preacher said this, or we had a visitor come back, or someone we've been praying for, or we went out to eat after church." Even something simple like we went to Chili's after church, right? And so, you know what most people are going to do when you say something religious? Nothing. But some people are. And so if you're in the habit, that's why Rod can go in a gas station and come out with a Bible study, is because the person said, "How are you?" And then he was like, "Oh, buddy, here we go." Well, not everybody takes it, but some people do. So I think just making your answers spiritual in nature. And that requires a bit of a change in us, because we have to go from physical people to spiritual people, to where God is just bubbling over all of the time. So I think that would be one of my biggest pieces of advice: is set yourself a goal. Every time somebody says, "How are you? How was your weekend? How was your night? What have you been up to? What are you excited about?" Include a portion of that with Christianity. And not that you're the guy that only shares spiritual memes on Facebook all the time and people just unfollow and it's white noise, but just make it genuine to who you are, right? We're blessed. We love the Lord. We love the church. Just let that come out instead of waiting on them to bring it up. Just bring it up. So that's one thing, is just include God in your conversations. When you pray at the restaurant, ask your waitress, "Is there anything we can pray for you about?" And just invite people to a spiritual conversation. I would also say, I wrote down this verse, 2 Timothy 2:24 says, "And the Lord's servant." All right. So Jason, it says the Lord's servant. So who are we talking about?
We're talking about Christians.
All right. So that's everybody, not just somebody on staff. "Must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach." So according to that verse, who gets a pass on teaching people?
Buddy.
Nobody. All right. So this isn't Jason's responsibility because he's on staff. It is, and maybe even extra, because we're supporting you to do it. But this isn't just the preacher's responsibility. It's mine. And when I realized that, it broke my heart, rocked my world, and changed my life. But think about this. How much of your Christianity can you outsource and still be a Christian? Well, I'll let the staff and the professionals teach and preach and door knock and set up VBS and do the benevolence case. Okay, how much of your Christianity are you willing to let someone else do and still claim to be a Christian? So this command to teach, I would say accept that and grow. Now, especially the past few years, have become a gifted communicator. You do a great job with your seminars, and there are levels to this, right? I mean, of course, you put in a lot of work, you've got a lot of reps, but some people are naturally going to be better at this than others, and they can reach a broader audience and they can reach them in a different way. But everyone has reach. So reach where you can. We do a men's group. 7 of our guys have baptized their first person. And so what that is taking this responsibility serious, that you're supposed to be able to teach. And though in some ways, not sure in always, my reach can be broader. I'm on the podcast and they're not. And this may reach somebody, maybe it won't, who knows, but there can reach people that they have friends that will not turn into this, don't know this, aren't going to listen to any spiritual podcasts, but they've listened to them. And so I think that change your mindset. You are a missionary and you're in your mission field of your life. and everybody has this responsibility. It's kind of neat. It mirrors the qualifications for elders in 1 Timothy 5, right? Don't be quarrelsome, apt to teach. And then he says in the next letter, I don't know if they were like, oh, cool, it's just the elders. Probably not. But in the follow-up letter, he says the Lord's servant. So just everybody is supposed to be peaceful, kind, and able to teach. So accept it and grow. Can I just throw out maybe like 10 bullet list type things?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. I would say read Acts 2 a lot. And we're known for Acts 2, but it's like we stopped at verse 38. But everything that happens between verse 38 and verse 47 is the parts of the church I think a lot of us are missing today. You look at how often the church was together day by day, and in homes and in the temple as you go to Acts 4. Acts 2:47, the Lord added to the church daily. Jason, if we rewrote Acts 2:47, what would it say today? And the Lord added to the church on what day?
Be on Sunday.
On Sundays, because that's when we're together and when we're talking about spiritual things. So read Acts 2 and see how often they were together and try to conform your schedule to that. And it may hurt your schedule, but it may save your soul. They were also very giving. Ask yourself, when's the last time you just gave money to somebody? You loaned your car to somebody. And I'm not talking about going around downtown and handing out copies of your house key, but I'm talking about that's one side of the problem. That'd be stupid. The other side that's also evil and bad is we make it so beautiful HGTV would be pretty, or proud of it. It's that pretty. And then we lock the door and it's just for us and our family. So the balance is who are we actually helping? So I would read Acts 2 and 2 until I was convicted over and over. I would also read some books from when the church was growing like wildfire in this country. I mean, find books like Go Ye means Go Me, or We Can Be Fishers of Men, or You Can March for the Master, or Ivan Stewart's From House to House. Just ask around. Ask older Christians, find evangelistic people and say, what are some books I can read? They talk about how to build up the Bible class program, how to do visitation, how to have personal Bible studies, how to get contacts, how to track visitors at your congregation. And wouldn't you know it, if we did those same things, we would grow just like they did. Listen to some sermons on evangelism. I put together a site you can go to, housetohouse.com/evangelism. And I put together some sermons from some of the best soul winners that I know, some of our staff, but then people like Hiram Kemp or Rob Whitaker or Aaron Gallagher or David Shannon, guys who are really growing places. Listen to the sermons there just over the next 4 or 5 weeks. Listen to 1 or 2 a day and see if that doesn't just blow your mind and give you some things you can do. Get to know some of the speakers there, or ask around your congregation. Who's the most evangelistic person here? Who's the most evangelistic person in town? Who's the most evangelistic person in the brotherhood? And then just reach out to them. They're not going to have just days of their time to give you, but they'll have moments here and there. Ask their advice. Go door knocking. So we're talking about families. We've been taking our kids door knocking since they were born. We have pictures of them in strollers even before they were 1. And my daughter's 2 favorite days at church are work day and door knocking day. And so they love that. And they've never known a year since they've been born that they haven't gone. And I call Maggie, my 7-year-old, the cutest doorbell ringer in the brotherhood. Attend something like an AMC, one of the local mission campaigns that we do throughout the year. Go on a mission trip. Take some church cards. We created these. We didn't have like a budget for them. I just had one of our students who works at Staples make them. It's a picture of our group. I have a QR code for a sermon series I taught, a link to our Instagram account, and me and Rod's cell phone numbers. And then we do stuff on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we have all of that here. And so we just hand these out anytime we see a college student and we have cards for the church. Just get in the habit. Take them, keep them in your pocket. I was at a concert, took one of my daughters this past weekend, and there was a guy who grew up in the church, and he talked about it in his concert. And before I had left that day, I took 2 of these and put them in my pocket, and I prayed, God, give me an opportunity to use these. Well, I was able to, when he brought up the Church of Christ in his concert, I said to Harper, that's who I took, we're going to go meet him. And we did. And after we talked with him and took a picture and stuff like that, I said, hey, I want to be kind of bold, but the reason I came back here to meet you is I wanted to have a spiritual conversation. You mentioned the Church of Christ, and I would love to have you back in the Church of Christ. And I know you've got a lot of people to talk to. If you ever want to talk about spiritual things with somebody that won't be judgmental, they'll be understanding and willing to ask some hard questions, like here's my cell phone number, listen to the sermon. So what'll come of that? I don't know. Most of the time when I hand these out, I don't hear back from people, but sometimes I do. And the thing that helps me the most is it just gets me looking for opportunity. So carry house to house with you, carry your church bulletin, make some of these cards up and have it and give it out. Maybe two more. Start a family Bible time every day. Did you grow up with daily family Bible time?
No.
No, me either. And so as I look back, I'm like, well, why not? I mean, my dad was a preacher and a first generation Christian. He knew how important this was. If I had a question, he would hand me this 5,000 page 40 Wallace book and say, hey, read this. And I'm like, cool, I don't care anymore. But he didn't know how to do that because his parents didn't teach him. He did the best he could. So for me and Ashley, when we found out we were having kids, we're like, we're going to start daily Bible time now, even before they were born. And so we've probably done that most days since they've been alive and even before. But I didn't grow up doing that. So I had no idea. So we just try different things. Sometimes we sing songs. Sometimes, I promise, it's so deep theological, I can't believe it. I wish it was recorded so I could share it with everybody. And then some nights, it's like, just shut up so we can pray and go to bed. But most of the time, it's somewhere in between the two. But have that daily Bible time that you're getting in the rhythm at least once a day that you talk about it. And at night, pray for opportunity to study the Bible with people. One thing that I love is we have pictures from the time the girls were 4 or so up until pretty recently, a couple months ago maybe, of us being at the building late night for a baptism. And there they are standing. And you can kind of gauge their ages through those pictures. So, but one way we do that is we pray for opportunity at night. And it's amazing sometimes how the next day somebody will come in our path that we get to study with. And so include your kids in Bible time. And the last one, just take a blank sheet of paper and maybe write down like 5 names. These are people that are not Christians. And these are people that we want to see come to the Lord. And you just pray with your kids about that every night. And it will change things, but it'll also change you. And so those are a few things. I would just try several things. Listen to a bunch of stuff, read a bunch of stuff, read the Bible, and be around people who are like this. And it's contagious.
Yeah, that's a very, very practical list. Great suggestions. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think there are some parents who, or just Christians in general, who think like, well, evangelism is sort of what the preachers are supposed to do, right? Or it's not really my thing. I'm happy to help and do the background work. I don't have those. I'm not outgoing. I'm not extroverted. And you've already talked on this a little bit, but anything in particular that you would say to challenge their thinking, and specifically any other resources that you've not mentioned that you would really encourage them to look at to take away that insecurity and replace it with confidence?
Yeah, maybe a few things. Like one is just don't compare yourself to other people. I have tried to, as I listen to preachers, for example, when I decided to start preaching more, I don't just listen to their message. I listen how they communicate. I try to emulate some of that and learn from what they've done that's successful. But some of those guys, man, I'll never be as polished or as dynamic as them. But I am a better version of myself than I used to be, and I'm able to do more. So I'm really not trying to be like anybody else or better than anybody else. I'm just trying to be better than I was and do what I can with what I've got. So God's not going to hold me accountable for the talents that you've got, but he's going to hold me accountable for the ones that I've got. And so sometimes you just got to be honest with yourself. Are you giving yourself an excuse not to do more? I mean, there are guys who speak in front of CEOs and then they say, I couldn't do the Lord's Supper. Oh, come on. If anybody could, you could. So ability isn't the issue. It's just willingness maybe, and maybe your heart. But so don't give yourself a pass on that. And we're not trying to keynote PTP or exposure. I'm just trying to have a conversation in my living room. And I'm going to be doing that anyway. So trying to figure out little things to turn that spiritual, talking about God in my life, praying before meals, asking friends how I can pray for them, asking people what they like about their church, doing a lesson so that I can then share it with somebody, little things like that. So don't sell yourself short. You know what's interesting? Well, I'm not real good at that. That's for other people. That's what 99% of Christians say. That doesn't seem practical or possible, right? So if you say that, really challenge yourself. I'd rather jump out there and try and then fall on my face than not try and have an unrealized talent. And again, we're not talking about preaching. That'd be good. Some of our guys probably shouldn't preach, and our women don't have that opportunity. So if you shouldn't preach and you can't, then what are you going to do? So maybe just set different goals, some realistic goals. And then also I would say just if you set it as a goal, try to do like, hey, I want to get stronger. Well, you go to the gym and you eat different. I want to get better at this. Well, listen to sermons on it. Read the scripture. I mean, Jesus used plain, normal people. He actually didn't use the religious people. I think our best preachers and teachers right now would be the non-religious. You know what I mean by that? Like the not on staff. They sometimes have a better skill set and better opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right there. There are some, it's kind of what you're talking about here. There's the perception that other people are uniquely equipped or gifted or whatever word you want to use, that this is their thing, not my thing. But I also think kids have unbelievable opportunities and skill sets a lot of times to be effective for evangelism. You talked about I referenced some of the questions your kids ask. It's, as a parent, part of my job is to also not just teach, but to learn my kid, to learn what they think, and then to guide that curiosity. Well, what are some other ways that you've seen kids be uniquely equipped to be effective for evangelism in ways maybe that even adults can't? What are some ways that kids kind of stand out? Some things that we could encourage and cultivate in our kids?
Yeah, and you saying that made me think of something from the last question. Let me mention something, and then it dovetails into this really well. Is people that say, "Oh, I'm better at behind the scenes stuff." Okay, that is really needed. I could really use a couple older women right now who would say, "Call me anytime a female needs a ride somewhere." And I have helpers. I'm not saying I don't, but you know what I'm saying? I would really be appreciative of someone who said, "I'm on go, I'm ready all the time." So while I think you should challenge yourself and you can do more than you think, go ride shotgun for a while before you try to drive, be a passenger and see what it looks like. There's nothing wrong with that growth process. But also, okay, if you're going to say that, I'm better at behind the scenes stuff, find a Jason Helton or an Andrew Itson or a Mike Houts and say, here I am. You know, I don't think I have a lot of skills. They'll have more than they think, but I do pretty well. I'm an engineer. Blank check. I know you go on mission trips all the time. I can't get off from work. I don't have the clearance. I can't leave whatever. Okay. But a blank check. Okay. Or, hey, I'm a single dude. I'm 50 and I know you work a lot with people who are going through addiction recovery. It would not be good for you to take them with your kids and your wife, because you just never know if they're having a bad day, but I can do that. I'd be willing to risk. If you're a behind the scenes person, man, show up and tell your soul winners and your workers, I'm here for however you need me. So I would say that. But with kids, no, dude, it is amazing. So it would be very creepy if I went up to a 6-year-old little girl at church and was like, hey, buddy, like, we're so glad you're here. Give me a hug. Like, let's go play. Let's hold hands and skip. Right.
Yeah.
But if your daughter does that, or my daughter does that, dude, it's a game changer. If you get the kids, you will get the parents. We had a military family move to this area, and their typical routine was they would visit 3 congregations before they decided on one. Well, the first Sunday they visited us at Oak Hill, my daughter Lainey went up to the kids and made them feel so welcome, made them come sit with us, played with us. We went out to eat after lunch. All 3 of their daughters were begging their parents, don't go visit another church, right? Even though I talked to the parents, they're used to people being friendly to them. But my daughter changed their lives and got them plugged in. Amazing. There was a time we went door knocking and we met a lady named Rebecca, and we had a Bible study with her. Bible study 1, me and Ashley and Rebecca. Well, Rebecca had a 2-year-old. You ever try to study with a parent who has a 2-year-old? I mean, the kid's awesome, so nothing wrong with the kid. But that makes for a terrible study. Read this for, oh, never mind. 5 minutes later. Okay, now pick back up. Now she had a question. Now, Bible study 2, we took Maggie, who at the time was 4. They go and they play in the bedroom. We have an entire Bible study with no interruptions. There's no way we could have done that without a kid, right? You go door knocking. One of the things that we encourage churches to do is don't let me and you wouldn't be the best team, although we're pretty good looking and charismatic, to hear some tell it. But we would suggest take a female, right? It looks less aggressive. Take a child with you and that kind of thing. And so each of the teams that we have that went out for this past door knocking day, we had kids on each of the teams. And so the kids are so excited because with us, we had 2 7-year-olds. One would ring the doorbell and the other would hand me house to house. And then the next door they would switch. And so we're having a good time. They're skipping down the road, holding hands. Doors were open that would not have been if we didn't have a kid with us. And people told us that. I wasn't going to open the door, but I saw the kids and I wanted to talk to them. We have a woman who's restored through door knocking, been out of the church 40 years. We have a 20-year-old we met recently downtown, basically door knocking type stuff, who's now a Christian. All these different things because we took kids with us. is a part of that, right? So include the kids. Another thing kids will do, you may not have noticed this, kids will hold you accountable and call you out on your junk.
Yeah.
Daddy, why were you talking to mean about that man? I thought we loved people. Whew, I got to be careful what I say. Dad, why don't you say that about the preacher? Hey, Dad, I thought we were going to evangelize her. Like, why didn't we tell the waitress about going to church? You don't think
Situational. I didn't instill that in my kids.
yeah, that's what's comfortable. But see, kids don't get that. That's something we get as we get older and mess up. But kids will hold you consistent. And there have been times my kids have said, "Hey, why didn't we go to this church service when we were out of town? Or why didn't we invite this person to church?" I'm like, here's the answer to that. I was wrong. And you saw it for what it is, and you've called me on it. So kids are very good about that. And maybe the last thing, I'll see if you have any, but kids can also help us reach other kids or families, people, young people, before they have 10, 20, 40, 60 years of baggage, false teaching, trauma, indifference. And that's one of the things I love about working with 20-year-olds right now, because as we're teaching them and studying with them and they're bringing friends, they don't have 30 years of denominationalism that we're trying to overcome. They don't have these marriage situations to overcome. And so children can help us reach people when we have a lifetime of God being able to use them.
Yeah, I also think their just natural curiosity is something that you kind of alluded to there at the end. A lot of times adult Christians, they kind of grow out of that curiosity. They get just satisfied with what they know as opposed to continuing to grow in Christ. So my kids teach me all the time. One, they teach me how to articulate my faith. When they ask questions, I have to be able to put it into words what I believe and be able to show them in the scriptures why I believe that, because this is what the Bible says about something. So they just in our conversation in our own home, they're training me to be more effective at sharing my faith. But then when their friends are asking questions, you're trying to equip them. So there's this chain reaction of curiosity. To me, is the greatest, I guess, skill, but it's also just the greatest blessing that they have at keeping adults accountable, like you said, but also helping their friends to ask questions. One thing I used to think is that becoming a mature Christian was all about knowing all the answers, but increasingly it's become more about asking better questions. And sometimes kids just questions. There's a reason Jesus said, "Let the children come to me," and be as these little children, right? There's something to that innocence there. And like you said, I think they can really disarm some situations effectively a lot of times. And after they've seen you engage with people, they don't just know the right questions, good questions to ask, but they also start hearing the answers themselves. So I think a way for us to teach our kids is to use them, to have them come along with us in those situations as we're teaching others. It's all a part of the planting and watering, right? We typically plant once, but you water constantly. And so I think every interaction that we have with someone that's spiritual in nature, bringing our kids alongside that as much as possible, will also help cultivate that good soil in their hearts.
Yeah, and my kids are 10, 10, and 7, so take some of this with a grain of salt. I'm an expert on raising faithful children. I mean, we'll find out. We'll see. But I can see positive signs, right? And I know as they get older, like right now, they're not mature enough. They're close, especially one of my twins is close to being a silent partner on a Bible study with me, handing out the Bibles, looking up verses, reading some and things like that, but not quite. But it won't be long, and probably even before they're Christians, where I won't be doing a study with Ashlei or one-on-one. I'll be doing a study with me and one of my twins, right? And so, I mean, I part of what I'm doing, I don't know. I'm just figuring it out as I go, and I'm trying to talk to good parents and follow good examples. But one of our college students said to me this past Monday, she said, "My parents are great. Don't get me wrong." And they are. I know her parents. But she said, I know they've shared their faith in their life. I've just never seen them do it. And I think from a lot of us, that's the experience, right? And so she said, "I love how you bring your kids and they see you being evangelistic and inviting people." I'm like, that is my entire goal. Not only my love for souls, but when it comes to my kids, because I didn't see it growing up. And I don't want my kids to get to the point where they say, "No, we never had people over and I never saw dad study the Bible," because there's no way they will if I don't. And so it's like, there's a matter of urgency to me to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love, that's the right word. Urgency. I love
Yeah.
that. Man, anytime we talk, it's always an encouragement. I always end up leaving more convicted than I did when we first started talking, and this conversation has been just like those as well. So one last final thought that you want to share with parents, one last encouragement maybe that you would give folks to not just share the gospel with others, but also to how to engage their kids in evangelism.
Yeah, I would say you're exactly who God wants to use in this situation. Yeah, you didn't go to preaching school. I mean, in some ways, good. I mean, those are good things, but that's okay. You maybe don't think you know as much as you should. Well, you probably know more than you think, but good. You need to be humble. You're not going to be used by God because you're some perfect qualified person, but he calls you and he'll qualify you along the way. I mean, Jason and I went to college together. We weren't great evangelists at Faulkner. I mean, we did some stuff. We did the best we could, but by and large, I took a lot of that for granted and didn't do everything I should. So I've grown a lot since then. So you just grow over time if you're willing to. So just be willing to let God use you. Just start praying, God use me, God use me. And it won't be long before he does. Just have a willingness to show up. Moses said, nah, I'm not good enough. Gideon said, nah, I'm not good enough. And God's like, no, that's part of the reason I'm using you. You come and my strength will be made perfect in your weakness, like he told Paul. So just show up. You may not think of yourself very highly, but God does, and we do. We could use the help, and I need somebody else to help me and show me where I can improve because I'm still trying to grow. So just put forth the effort, and God will use you, and God will bless you, and it'll make Christianity feel more complete than it ever has. When there are people there who are there because you invited them, they're there ultimately because of God, but God used you. That's a different experience than I got there a few minutes late and I left a few minutes early and I don't know those people very well. If you're evangelistic, it'll make the church mean more to you than anything else ever has. So maybe if church doesn't feel complete, maybe you're not really experiencing the full church that God wants you to be a part of. You do some of these things and it'll change church for you completely.
I love it, man. Just because you may not feel prepared doesn't mean God hasn't equipped you to be effective. So that's a great place to, man. Matt, thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Love you, buddy. Now get off and get back to work.
You got it, man. Thanks so much for tuning in to this Carline Conversation. Hey, thanks again so much for listening to this episode of the Carline Conversation podcast. If it's been helpful to you, please follow and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening. It also helps if you'll take a moment to rate the show. It goes a long way to growing the podcast. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share or suggestions for future topics or guests, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or email. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you on the next episode of Carline Conversations.